What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversation. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best News Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, I am the host of the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And two, when I have some time, I make the time. I am the board chair for the Global Food and Drink Initiative, whose mission is to showcase Blacks in the diaspora who are doing their thing in food, wine, and travel. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And it is Black Canada Talking time, because we're broadcasting live on May 2nd. And Black Canada Talking is a live online event that provides Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes on stories and POVs that are of importance to them, or we showcase Black Canadians who are doing their thing. Today we have another special guest, a new friend to the Black Canada Talking platform, new friend to the Dr. Vibe Show platform. We know him a little bit because I've had him on my other platform a little while back, but I wanted to showcase this Black male thought leader, Black Canadian male thought leader to the world. His name is Anton James. He's a son, brother, and father of two amazing children, a 13-year-old daughter and a soon-to-be-old 12-year-old son. And while they both, as he says, they both believe themselves to be in their mid-30s at least, they effectively keep him sharp and alive. He is the youngest son of two brothers, both of them attending school out of the country. After returning from the United States, he attended the University of Toronto. Upon graduation, Anton was recruited by UPS, United Parcel Services, and was one of the 4 members of the permanent strategic business planning team. While he was at UPS, he developed and managed strategies, programs, and projects, and managed hundreds of millions of dollars and teams of up to 25. After leaving UPS, Anton led the strategy and marketing for technology startup, which grew to become Canada's fastest growing company. Along the way, he won many awards and accolades, culminating in the an invitation to the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, to discuss global competition. After the technology startup, he transitioned into consulting. Some notable clients include Rogers, TELUS, the Toronto Transit Commission, and Autism Ontario. At this point, he endured some personal shakeups, a divorce, but he was blessed to secure full custody of his 2 children. As a result, he transitioned back into the corporate realm and led marketing sales strategy efforts for diverse industries, including medical, SaaS, technology, artificial intelligence, and not-for-profit, to name a few. While he continues to work in marketing, sales, and strategy realms, he's been ramping up his hosting, moderating work, and currently hosting 2 national shows, which engage politicians, banking, technology, and industry leaders, while the other show engaged segment leaders on diverse sectors. So he says what distinguishes himself is his ability to connect with people, his adaptability, and his tenacity. So let's welcome to Black Canada Talking for the first time, but not the last time, Mr. Anton James. How are you today, sir?
Not bad at all. Thank you for inviting and reading my bio there. It's a little bit long, but it's okay.
No, it's you've done a lot and you need to be showcased. That's what Black Canada Talking is all about, showcasing the achievements of Black Canadians. So, hey, well deserved, well earned, and thank you for being here.
No problem. My pleasure for sure.
Good. Before we get into chopping it up a bit today on Black Canada Talking, we'd just like to know a little bit of your background. We've got the professional end. Where did you grow up, life growing up, etc.?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I grew up for the most part in the GTA, Mississauga specifically. Did school down here, and I went up here. Then I went away. Then my parents moved a little bit north. I went to private school in my later high school years, and then before heading down to the States, I went down there for school. And then after schooling down in Michigan State, I came back to Toronto. I went to U of T, and the rest you took over right there. Via
Nice. There's so many things that we could chat about today, and we're going to start just. We were chopping it up yesterday on the phone. We went through about 50 topics.
We did.
Just like, because Anton says, I don't know what we're going to talk about. And I started going in. He goes, yeah. So we're just going to land on different things and have conversation today. From your perspective, Anton, the last year has been challenging for many Black Canadians.
Yeah, for sure.
How has it impacted you personally, professionally, and what are you seeing the impacts on Black Canadians?
That's a very interesting question. Right now we're in a cultural mind shift where we sit down there and we see, movements within the community itself in terms of people taking attention within the community. And it's affecting me personally because I've got a lot involved, a lot of not only community events, but structural events in the corporate personal realm. And that's good on one side, but on the other side, I'm somewhat frustrated. And so the thing that I think is good is, again, there's activity. There's actual people come together talking about issues and events where they wasn't happening in the past. So that's a great thing. But the challenge is to really bring about effective, long-term, sustainable change. It takes more than just noise. George Floyd was a terrible thing that actually happened, and it culminated in a few things, but protests alone is like building, a bake sale for a church building fund. Protest, it's good, but that does not bring effective change. And my fear is right now that we started off having, we had a spotlight within the community itself and for the community, but that has been focused on mainly protesting without looking at the other factors that will bring about sustainable change. Factors such things as economic change. You got to talk about social change. You got to talk about structural change. You got to talk about empowerment change, and really change the mandate and the thought to actually coalesce together in one to actually move for economic. It's all got to tie to economic. When we bring strategies or any form of change points, you really got to focus on uniting together as one. And I think what we're challenged being is, one, we haven't neutralized under one uniform platform. So, we still have all the divides within us. We're not, we have the African Americans, and then you have the Scotians, and you have those in the Caribbean and so forth. So we haven't united under one of those challenges. Two, we haven't coalesced under one strategy. This is what we want politically. This is what we want economically. This is what we want from a social reform, a judicial reform. And those without having any strategy and plan, or there is individual strategy, but collective as one, it's challenging to actually implement because you have many people pushing different ways. And so that part's a little bit frustrating for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to see that, there's a lot of organizations emerging now, and there are a lot of people talking. But I'm frustrated because not a lot of movement has happened outside differently. Not a lot of sustainable long-term movement that will affect economic change, because ultimately, it all comes down to economics.
Good stuff.
I can go in more detail, but
no, you're going to. But let me ask, what do you think some of the root causes are for the lack of collaboration?
Hey, you're asking some hard questions, man, because you know what? We can go back. Socialization is one. We can socialize the system as a whole. Any system, not just this system. Any system is there to maintain itself, and so that the system will educate those that are under the system to act in a certain way, and that system will sit down and say, and we've bought into the system. For example, a lot of our forefathers came to over here, and I'll talk about Canada specifically because I'm here right now. Is our parents came in here working hard, doing what they got to do to make a better and a change for us. But the reason, the second generation, they got comfortable because now they have the appearance of middle class, so they don't have that same drive. And because they don't have that same drive, they're not united together for one commonality, let's make a change, let's make a difference. It's more, it's in versus let's stand and fight together and push for economic growth. everyone tends to be looking for themselves and recognizing as a people, it takes a village to raise a child. It is a community that really makes forward. And we have lost that unique, I won't say we haven't lost it, but it's not as strong, the diverse push for unity and community, because community will ensure economics are standing up. That will ensure judicial reform is actually done. The political, political movements and continuation, social reform, and how we raise and the moral values and all those ones, we're moving on where it's more individualistic. And I think that's part of our challenge.
Has the last year widened that opportunity of collaboration in your head?
The last year, it widened the opportunity on the surface, but in reality, no, it hasn't. There hasn't been more coalition. There hasn't been more unity. What if you're seeing happen is a bunch of organizations, a bunch of different ones joining up, but they're not. A lot of them aren't coming together and say, you know what, let's put our differences aside. My background, as I said, when I write strategies, so I've worked with a lot of organizations. I write strategies, and I say the first thing is everything dilutes from the one general push. We've got to put it off to the side. Amongst ourselves, we can figure out the uniqueness, the whatever there may be, the Scotians, the Jamaicans, the Bajans, the Trinis, the Africans. Forget that, because we've got to come together as one. And so the divide is being open where we're getting more, as a community, we're getting more attention, but we're not taking that attention to focus it on a funnel to say, okay, let's now, because universally we all have this one challenge, that we're being underrepresented in the corporate realm, that we're being treated in the judicial system, our educational systems, we're not being taught the cultures and history that best reflects both the negative and positive of our experience. These are things that you unite, and I don't see a lot of coalition to actually move those together. There are definitely organizations that are doing it, but I'm seeing a lot of just everyone doing it, everyone doing it for themselves.
A few minutes ago, you said if you got permission for me to go deeper, I'm giving you permission to go deeper.
Okay. Well, okay. So give me some direction, because I can go on a lot of different tangents.
Okay. All right.
Where do you want me to go?
So let's start off with just the whole frustration of organizations popping up, and I see them all over the place, and it makes me scratch. Well, there's no marks in my head, but it makes me go, is it still the whole divide and conquer from the past still living out?
Well, you're hitting it dead on. If you're going back to the Willie Lynch, that's exactly what it is. You're talking about the field slaves versus the house slaves. It's the same mentality. You know what? In society, you have those that have, the worldwide caste system, and the blacks tend to be at the bottom of the caste system. So the ones that rise above, they say, well, I want to make sure I'm distinguished. I wanted to build a caste system within my own caste, and so I'm better than those ones, or I'm going to be different than those ones, and I can do it. Let me become all the glory. And you're like, listen to me. At this point, recognize at the same spell, what you're doing is you're diluting it. Double E. Du Bois said the talented tend to go through, that those that naturally rise up should look back and reach back to pull others up. Oftentimes, that's not what's happening. Those are reading up. The talented tend to going back and saying, look how I'm different. Look how I'm different. And I don't want to work with those ones. I want to be the one superstar in the room. I want to be the one that can sit down and say, I'm doing great. And when I do so, my privilege is to get more acceptance versus, looking for our second and third generation. Our responsibility, the reason why I get so involved with our Black community is not only just am I a Black individual, but I have kids coming up, and they shouldn't encounter the same challenges that I encountered. We need to be putting infrastructure in there. We need to work together. Put aside, listen to me, as I said, and I say again, I'm against, I'm of Jamaican descent, but I would be against any strategy that says, let's elevate Jamaicans. I'm of, they say a mixed funny eyes. Okay. I would be against any strategy that enhance the funny eyes or the curly hair or whatever it be, because that is the problem. It's divide and conquer. Find different ways to dilute our overall strength. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how I'm different than you, than you, than you, than you. We're all together as one. And if we move together as one, we can actually make united change difference. But that philosophy is not being coalesced. The challenge is other communities, they're coalesced because, they're distinct, but they're held together because they may have one or two religions. If you go into the Asian community, they're either Hindu or Muslim. There's not a whole lot. But in the Black community, from Baptist, Pentecostal, Episcopalian, so there's no one coalescing, community group that brings us all together. Or you'll have the Jamaicans versus the Bajans versus the Trinis versus the Africans, and we're not. And we're saying, there are organizations for sure that is actually saying, let's reach out to all. But there's a lot of organizations that's just trying to specialize. I'm like, this is not the time for that. The time is once we get up there and we're able to move forward, then we can split. We can worry about all that later on. But just to be seen in the past, historically, if you look at any type of movement, it's always you can't dilute your power or spread too far. And too many people are just saying it's about me, and like, no, it's about the community right now, man. It's about the community. I can go on. You let me know if I'm going too far.
No. Going deep, brother. Going deep. I want you to continue on, but I also want to add another layer. Obviously, you're involved in a lot of community work. Do you get to have conversations with individuals in these organizations who you feel aren't getting it? And what are you telling them? And is the light bulb coming on?
Oh yeah, for sure. So because like I said, I'm involved with a few industry groups, and I don't know whether I don't know why it's anyway. So I get approached a lot by a lot of other ones as well, and they're saying, well, I don't like this person, I don't like what they're doing, so I want to build something totally different, and I'm going to do this. I'm like, listen to me, stop. And I'd get to the point where to say, I'm not doing any more strategies for any more diverse communities. You have a great thing that has a little bit niche that's different than what they're doing. Why don't you guys come together and join them together? And what I was finding was there was organizations, some that was based in the States and trying to come up here, and there was organizations that was trying to focus on economics, another one trying to focus on this. And instead of saying, I want to unite together, they weren't. They were saying, I want to, when that money comes, there's money coming out, I want to be able to distribute. I'm like, well, based upon what? What infrastructure do you have? Like, it's just now that you heard money might be available, now you want to make a difference. Well, how are you going to make that difference? Money by itself is not going to be an answer unless you know how to distribute that so that the community, it's got to be, we got to the place where the community is the benefactor, not individual, not me, not you, not this, but not only for us, but our children, because we have to build systems. That's what we really need, is we've got to affect, and I've told many, we have to build effective systems that can be passed along. So when the interest in the community that the dies down, that we can sustain ourselves. So, the reality is when we talk about things that how does the Black community sustain itself? We don't have community. Where's our hospitals? Where's our schools? When is our industry? I've heard people say, well, we just got to spend our own. I said, in theory, you're saying that, but you don't know what you're saying. So you're going to just spend Black? Okay, so how are you going to spend Black on your telephone? How are you going to do that? Show me your gas stations. How are you going to, where's your cars being made? How are you going to do that? Like, think about what we've got to do. How are we going to build the infrastructure? Because that's what we need. We need to unite together to find, when we see there's funding sources coming, how do we make it such that sustainable, that can build up? Because it's twofold. There's a lot of businesses within our community that are really hustles. They're hustles that people just call businesses. I make two patian and I sell two patian. That's a business. That's not a business. But I'm not blaming them. It's because oftentimes they weren't taught the infrastructure of how to do it. How do you put your systems in so that you can have access, you can get funding, so that you can build into business, that you can hire? How do you make it such that you're doing great now because you make $50,000? Great. But you could be just so much better if you just systemize. If you learn to systemize, you can make $500,000, And now your children have something to inherit. You don't want to be inheriting jobs, but people are coming out here and they want to floss. This is not time for flossing. This is time for building so that our children can now follow a footprint, follow, understand, listen, build up a community that can, one, build its own economy, can sustain within itself, and pass those economies on to stop spending on. You make little money, you have Gucci bag and Gucci. You're spending $5,000 on a purse, and you live in an apartment. Like, what are you doing? And you have 3 kids. Come on, man. That's not the time for this. The time is build a system so that, and teach your children how to make a difference, so they know how to be economically viable, how they can access funds. Oftentimes, there's main thing is, listen. One of the courses I do is called it's a financial class, and we say you need to factor in. Okay, you want to grow, perfect. How are you set up to get government funds? Are you set up to get? Are you set to grow? How do you grow? Recognize there's processes. There's reason why other communities do well. It's because they implement processes. When you start making money, it's not just about how much you make, but it's how much you keep. So are you working within tax structures? Are you working to optimize your resources and your suppliers? And how do you engage them? Where you're weak. You know what? It's okay to say you're struggling in certain areas. How do you partner to fill out your gaps? Those are the things that are the challenge that I was seeing a lot of companies, they're not doing. A lot of our small businesses, we were hurt hard in this pandemic because a lot of us were so interdependent and dependent upon our own nest community that we weren't set up to sustain and grow outside of our natural norm. Well, the economics has shifted, and people are saying, I can't wait till it goes back. It's not going back. It's not going back. There'll be a new norm, but just know it'll be a new norm. You know what? And be willing to pivot, willing to understand that you have to embrace technology where you can, utilize different sources to access funds so you can grow. You can be better. You can aim higher. But let me show you how. But open your mind that it's a possibility. Yes, you may have the best oxy and jerk chicken. But I agree with you. Your flying fish, nothing better than that. Okay, if it's great, how do you set it up and franchise it? How do you make sure that your system is not only, is it good, but sustainable?
Profitable and sustainable.
Yeah, revenue doesn't mean that you're doing well. Oftentimes you see people, they're happy. Yo, I'm gonna make 50,000. Perfect. So how much did you spend? 48. So you only made $2,000. Understand, but you can change things up. So there's a lot of exuberance for possibilities, but a lot of people weren't. I see some are starting to, but it's slow. Are starting to embrace knowledge or changing their mindset of knowledge. They're rather going to their comfort zone, and comfort is the biggest killer of opportunity and growth. And right now, people are looking to comfort and looking for someone else to do what they need to do. Yes, everyone can point out the problems, but very few saying, let me try to take on the challenge. The reality is we all have natural skills, but we all have natural weaknesses. And in our community, I'm not seeing a lot. I'm seeing there is definitely some that's trying to address their weaknesses, their own weaknesses. And some of them are systemic. Yes, they are. But there's also some systemic solutions that can be done to those problems. And in light of it, I'm not seeing a lot of people moving towards them as I would like to. But I'm hopeful. I try to remain hopeful because there's some big initiatives that are coming, and they're going to be short. Some of them may be short-lived. The timing of some of these things that are coming down are interesting. When you look to see some of the programs coming, and you also recognize in the election coming up, you have to wonder how long are these initiatives going to go. But if we recognize that, and we do, then move while you can. And I fear that a lot aren't. They're just looking for now, and they're not looking for long term.
I'm going to get to the whole thing in a moment. I'll get your opinion on all the government initiatives that are coming out. I'll park on that for a second, but you did say something that I want to highlight on. And one of the things I believe and I share with especially business people, there's a difference between between profit and revenue.
Yes, for sure.
Can you
Yeah,
dive in? Can you dive into that just for a second for us?
yeah, sure. So systemically, when you're setting up businesses, right, it all goes down. There's a lot of people that say they have businesses and they don't have businesses. They have hustles that they're under the cloak of a business, which basically means that they are running it out of their own bank account. They don't have a separate bank account. They've never paid taxes on it. They don't have because they see money coming in. They think they're elated, but they're not recognizing how much money they spent out to get that money. You know, what you have to look, if you want to grow and you want to be able to access, a lot of companies, how they grow and access is because they're able to apply for business loans, government grants, government programs, because they have a business plan, have financial structures. But a lot of people say, listen, I made this amount of money. Yes, revenue is a good thing, but you also the fact there's an expense. There's real expense here. And if you made $100,000, so you sold 10,000 whatever widgets, and you made $100,000. Okay, that's good. That means $100,000 came in. But you also have to factor, you spent $80,000 to produce that, and you and all 6 of your children or all 10 of your staff spent 80 hours to do so. There's an actual cost to do something. So revenue doesn't need profit. Any companies have revenue, but we don't have any profit. And when they're structuring things, that's why even out of this COVID, a lot of business in our community didn't qualify for a lot of these loans because one, they didn't have
processes in place. No
they
governance.
Have infrastructure. They don't have, right. Their bank account, their personal bank account is also their business bank account. They didn't have any payroll on staff. They didn't have any people being paid. So all those different ones, people say, well, I want to pay the taxes, but those same things, you don't realize people get ahead by systems. And that's not just businesses, that's people, that's a community. And we've got to develop and recognize other communities are utilizing systems to move forward. So for example, there are many communities that are getting government grants. Grants, you don't pay that money back. You don't, but you can only get it if you can only qualify if you have a business account, if you have filed your taxes, if you've done these particular aspects. And there's nothing wrong with that. Paying taxes is only relative if you're not making money. If you're making money, it doesn't matter. It's like a man saying, well, you know what? I don't want to pay any taxes. Well, listen, if I'm going to get $1 million and it's going to cost me $50,000 to pay taxes, I'll pay $50,000 in taxes every day to get $1 million. Mm-hmm. But people say, well, I don't want to pay. Well, you want to avoid paying taxes and avoid the positive. We've got to change our mindset. We have to change our mindset that what we're trying to do is build profitable business. Profit means, it means a couple of things. One, that after you pay your expenses, you pay yourself, there is still money in there that can reinvest and start it and continue to grow. Two, you've got to pay it so that you can pass along these businesses, because many people are setting up, they're just jobs that they pay themselves. That's not a business. You want to set things up so that if you're not working, it's still making money. And how you do that, you set up systems. And that is what I don't see as strong within our community, is how to, okay, you don't want to let them know what's in your recipe. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Well, there's ways to protect that. Maybe only at least this person have this part of information, this person get specialists can do. You don't have to be you shouldn't be the accountant and the bookkeeper and the person answering the debt. If you want by you selling can make $500 an hour, why are you the one answering the phones that can be replaced with someone that makes $10 an hour? Why you change the mindset? That's oftentimes, it's sometimes small things that make such a big difference. Yes. Understanding the system. And in our community, I find that we weren't taught that. We were taught to be employees, coming over here. We were taught to be employees. We were taught to work with the system. And I'm saying to us that this is the time to challenge what we've been taught, because we know there's more. One of the communities I work with, I don't know if I'm supposed to avoid or saying certain organizations. I don't know if I am. But one of them, they have a program out there, an example, and what they're doing, they're helping Black specific communities they're giving them grants. So if you have a business that can show that it is a business and not a hustle, that means that it can sustain itself. It can grow, it can scale. Be clear, scaling is not growth. Scaling is the ability to grow without breaking. So in other words, if you're making pepper pot in your kitchen, there's going to be a point when you can only make so much pepper pot in your kitchen. You've got to be able to go and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to get an outside facility. And in order to make this happen, I'm going to have a certain amount make this portion. Then I'm going to have a financial system and get resource that can get this, a supplier that does this, an accounting system that can do the whole app, so that you build systems so that you now oversight and you are now working on your business in contrast to in your business. That needs to be the goal of our community, is that you can get an idea that you are turning, and so you work on your business instead of in your business. Too many of our people work in our business. That's all they're doing, and they're working 18, 19 hours a day, and that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. 2, your kids aren't going to want to do it behind you. And 3, that means anything that happens, you turn sick, and all of a sudden you can't work 18 hours a day, your business goes under. It's not because of lack of intelligence. It's not because of lack of good ideas. It's not because of lack of anything else. Oftentimes it's not knowing and sometimes refusing to hear. So that's my frustration of this whole thing. Again, I can go on tangents because I've seen it many times. I work with a few organizations, and it's frustrating to me because we as a people, we've got to not only move. See, for me, I build strategies. I'm a strategist. And when I build strategies, everything's got to tie to one of 3 things. If you want to be effective, your strategy has to either turn to affect profit, privilege, or position. You've got those 3 things. Everything else is irrelevant. If it doesn't tie to changing profit, privilege, and position, it doesn't change. And I'm in this position right now. I want us as a community to change.
There you go. There you go. Laying it down. Let's take a look at what are your thoughts of the whole system of the grants and loans, that system. Do you feel that those systems are set up for success for the Black businesses, the Black social enterprises, and because you've already highlighted that you feel that a lot of them are not set up for success. What are your thoughts about how the government does the way it hands out grants and loans?
Oh, you're getting me into some interesting waters here. Yeah, I'll tell you this. Historically, I'll talk historically, then I'll go into present. Historically, we've seen over and over and over again that initiatives and programs and policies that's quote unquote been targeted for the benefit of quote unquote the Black community never tends to go to those communities. You have things as we'll get access to government grants and procurement. You go out these contracts, but if they say what's the qualification of those contracts? Well, you've had to be in business for 15 years and have $10 million in assets and have 40 staff. Well, that by itself disqualifies 98% of Black companies. But they say it's going to Black community owned. So what ends up happening is you have larger other people, other communities come take that one and say, okay, but we'll have a Black person in there, and it doesn't get disseminated through. You have programs such as affirmative action. Affirmative action was deemed as one because Blacks were disenfranchised from the system. And what ended up happening was, well, one, who is the biggest benefactor? It's not Blacks, it's female whites. And this is not. I'm just saying what the facts are. I'm not saying yes or no. Or you'll see that there's a lot of representation in the lower levels. Diversity, similar now we're talking about diversity and inclusion. A lot of diversity and inclusion means let's get the numbers. Well, numbers alone is ineffective if they don't have position or have the ability to make effective change. You know what? When I was at a company, a large logistics company, I'll just say out there, it was very interesting. You have 5,000 people across 5,000 people across Canada, only 5 of us had any form of power. So there was a whole leap of our community in the janitorial staff, in the clerking staff, in the secretarial staff, but in any form of power that could hire people, that could influence decisions, influence programs, it's very relative. So you know what, this realm, because a lot of people are talking about diversity, inclusion, equity and inclusion, there's a very big difference. I don't think it's well known, and I think right now that I see that a lot of these organizations is going to maintain that same philosophy, though I see them making efforts, because you have to remember, at the end of the day, a system is designed to protect itself. Ultimately, they're not going to give up power from themselves and give it to somebody else. They're not going to want to do that. Martin Luther King afraid, power will never be given up by the oppressor. It must be seized by those that are oppressed. And I think the challenge being oftentimes, because solutions are made for us, I'm somewhat skeptical, because if we're not making our own solution, there's typically history has shown us that many times that they are, it hasn't been to our best interest.
Okay.
But I remain hopeful, because this round I'm seeing something that are different. And the only thing I'm seeing different, and for example, I know they're starting 2020, there's a Black interest group that's actually leading some of the loans that are coming through, and I know there's some organizations that's doing a program called the BAIDS, and what they're doing, they're disseminating. So I know there are community groups that are doing certain things in concert, but as a carte blanche, I have one eye open. I'm hopeful, and one eye open. I remain to have one eye open.
No problem. You had mentioned in your last share about diversity inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
What's the scale on 1 to 10 about your level of hope in the whole area of diversity inclusion? That's been really pronounced by a lot of organizations, especially over the last year. And are you confident that we'll see it long term?
Yeah. So, I am very concerned about that. I think sometimes it's a political, public relations move by many organizations, that they're interested. And you know what? Systemically, I don't want to step on toes here. So I'll try to be gingerly. Systemically, we can see that there is challenges, right? There's challenges within particular communities that have been directly disenfranchised. There's been systemic processes given. We look across not only Canada but North America. Systemic policies and programs that have been targeted for specific communities, and in response, those specific communities were developed programs that were meant for them. But you now see that you have other communities that did not go through the fight, did not have the same struggles, did not have the same policies and procedures that was in place to systemically hold them back, benefiting from many of the adversity that some of these communities, and specifically the Black community, has felt. So when they talk about now, all of a sudden they're waking up that they didn't realize that this was a problem before, is somewhat disingenuous. Because to say they didn't know, it's interesting. But what I will say, I know there is a movement to now have them. What I would like to see, that if they're going to, so let me go back up differently. I am systemic because, again, I believe everything comes down to economics. You cannot force a private company to do anything. You can only because it's a private company, you can. But what you can do is, if I really want to see change, what I want to see change that can bring, change that can be meaningful. So if you recognize the community, specifically I'm talking about the Black community, is disenfranchised, and say, hypothetically, we represent 30% of a population, 20% of the population, whatever it may be, and the biggest employer, what you can control is you can control government. That's what you can control. So if government's supposed to represent us as a whole, just say around now, we represent 20% of the population, and the government spends tax dollars, and they're the biggest employer of economy, then we should have a representation of our population of those tax dollars. We can say if we represent 20%, then we should have a represented portion. If that's 15 or 20% of the economic contracts that go out, that's how you actually make meaningful difference. By saying I'm going to hire, I swear I'm going to hire some Black people. I swear. Well, that's relative, because what does that mean? In the past, we've seen that with affirmative action. As I said, when I've been in organizations of 5,000 and only 5 Black people had power. But we had the whole janitorial staff, the whole secretary staff, all the clerks were full of minorities. And I'm not even going to say minorities, I'll say Blacks, because I'm not, listen, don't misunderstand me. I have love for every community, everyone. You just have to love mine first. I don't want to come against any of the communities, but again, and so when I hear things that don't tie directly to power, position, or profit, and even for our community, I get skeptical. I'm sorry. If I don't see you saying, okay, we're going to hire X amount and at this level, so that's now power. So that means that person not only can influence what the company's doing, but he can actually hire people. If I don't see policies, every time I'm going to hire, I have to make sure that there's a certain amount of Blacks included in that process pool. And that therefore, similarly, as the same movement they've done for the gender gap, that same strategy being applied, I'm somewhat skeptical, because I'm saying, okay, so you've made dramatic differences for gender gap equality. And I think that's phenomenal. That's great. So you know how to do it, but you're not applying it when you're applying to this community. They're showing you a challenge. So when you say, am I concerned? I am. I would say, yes, I am concerned about that. Do I believe, now one thing I will say, many organizations are saying certain things now because for many reasons. Some is because they're being corporately shamed into it. 2, some are because, it's part of their political mandate. But is it sustainable? No, I'll tell you this. Shame, morality, those are not business deciding factors. Those are not sustainable. What becomes sustainable is when you build up a community such that they can produce products and services that are seen and are a viable option for larger corporate entities, such that they're saying, okay, then we can now utilize them as we can utilize any other community, and we want to include them. Unless you can get to the stage where they're economically sustainable by themselves, then they will always be in a position where they're asking for something that they should be demanding, that they should have been there. So am I skeptical? I am skeptical. Am I hopeful? I'm remaining hopeful, because I'm seeing change in last year and the year before I didn't see it. But I'm nervous because I'm not seeing the strategic processes, policies put in place that they know that they have done for gender equality, that they've done massive growth. And I think that's great. I think that's phenomenal. But I'm not seeing those same initiatives, that same tenure, and that same and what's the word? A lack of words right now. The
passion,
same, passion,
or commitment,
commitment,
right. Long-term commitment.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. So I'm nervous. Yeah. Yes, there's you hear there's this fund and that fund, and that's great. And I'm not shooting any of it down. I hope I'm wrong, but I just haven't seen it. Seen some do. Again, with the BPA, I've seen them do some things, and they're one of the few ones I'm seeing do stuff. I've heard about some other organizations, they're doing stuff, but then I won't go into the finer details, but it's not sustainable. It's not long-term. Once this, the major push dies down, how are you going to sustain yourself? How are you going to maintain and continue to support communities? How do you build a community? There's a difference between a neighborhood and a community. A neighborhood says you're in a certain geographic structure, that you have different things in a geographical structure, but you're not necessarily connected. A community means that you now have a shared common belief, a shared common interest, a shared common value. How are you building the value such that we tell our kids to get educated? We tell them to get educated to go and do what? Because our own community, we're not building a community that can educate those kids when they do get educated. So when they finish, that they're oftentimes the last hired and the first hired. We have to get to build our community so that we can now not only send our kids off to school and give them the scholarships and the opportunities, but also build the community. So when they're finished, they can come back and they work for us. They work within our community, building up our community. Again, I built a 7-stage strategy of how we get through this. How do we change the structure? And it takes just that, man. You know what? You have to have tied economics from tax. We raise X amount of taxes as a community, that therefore X amount of contracts need to come to our way. We need to build trade within diaspora. We've got to trade directly with some of our diaspora unions. We talk about what you do in Jamaica. Well, why are you're outsourcing your business to Philippines and Africa and Philippines and India, and outsource some of those call centers to Jamaica and to Trinidad and to the Guyana nations. You can talk about products, but you can actually do that. Now you start to say, okay, education. We got to educate our kids different. We have a lot of teachers in the community. How they teach in growing up in school here. The only time I heard about blackness was, they're naked running in a hut in Africa, or they were former slaves. It wasn't until I went to a private school that I heard about my history, and I went down the States. And then you hear about the W.E. Du Bois and the Marcus Garvey. So you really hear about their strategies and what they're doing, and you hear about the Dr. Claude Andersons, and you hear about the different minds, and you say, wait a second, you don't even know these things exist. Right now, you hear a black person doing well, and it's an anomaly. You're like, oh wow. They go on about LeBron James. LeBron James is phenomenal. I love what he's doing. Forget his basketball side. I'm talking about what he did with his school system. He's an athlete. Phenomenal. Who cares? Let's talk about what he really did. He's making massive changes. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how. What did he do? What were the systems? That's what we've got to educate our systems. What was our history? Where do we come from? They talk about Egypt. They talk about Egypt like it's in a different country. Egypt is in the middle of Africa. Africa is a black nation. Where did they come from? Where was science and chemistry and calculus and physics? Where did that come from? That came from a black community, but that's not shared. So oftentimes you have black people there. I've seen a lot of kids. They're embarrassed of their blackness. They try to hide and pretend. Well, where are you from? Well, my grandfather was Irish. Well, listen to me. Be proud of where you're from, man. Be proud. Don't talk to me about your 7th generation. Well, man, so it's because we're not educated to a certain sense to really understand the strength and the value that we are. We're educated to understand and value ourselves and our contributions. When we don't educate ourselves, then we talk about the social systems and the judicial systems. Well, then how, they talk about the states, like the things they're doing, there's no organized strategy. Every time they're killing, nothing personal. George Floyd is phenomenal. I'm so happy that he got tested, but the reality, it's a different strategy they got to do. Everything's got to tie to one. Remember, I told you, power, privilege, and profit. Every time that they do, one get shot, forget protest. 2, organize a coalition that every time someone is shot, that there is a fund being set up that you're going to sue the city, sue that cop individually, sue that police force, and you're going to start to see, now it's starting to affect their economics. If it affects a system's economics, then they'll bring about change. Sit down and protest, and they know that you're going to protest for 2 weeks, and then you're going to go home. That doesn't bring about change. And so we've got to educate. How do we do that? Even our own judicial system. Well, how do we get representation? Because, having a person on the board that has income like you, but they have mindset that's totally different than you, is not your advantage. Clarence Thompson is not helping us. He's actually hurting us. So how do we educate and change the judicial system? Again, it comes back onto economics. So the whole aspect is my whole philosophy is we've got to really explore our opportunities. We can make change. There's a great opportunity because things are changing. This COVID pandemic has really influenced things in a way and brought new light. But I'm fearing they're wasting this opportunity to coalesce under an economic strategy that will make meaningful, not short-term, but long-term continual change for our community. That's my overall fear based on what we're doing here. I do believe we can change it if there is the right focus given on the right individuals. However, history has shown that our community our leaders have been assigned for us, have been our mandates have been assigned for us, and we are not coalesced under one umbrella to push outside of what's been assigned to us. So I'm concerned. So are the things such as affirmative in diversity and inclusion, is it really going to work? It's not being pushed by us. So I have a fear.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong though.
No, I hope we hope so too. As we start winding it down, then what is your call to action for the non-melanated community?
Yeah.
And what's the call to the action to the Black Canadians? So let's start with non-melanated Canadians. What's your call to action to them?
Sure. Okay. No problem. First of all, to the community as a whole, don't understand. There's no hate going. You know, sometimes people say that they're fearful or they hate, those guys are trying to hate on us or what. I don't hate any community, none. I think that there's ways to coalesce, but we've got to be realistic. When we look at any problem, is to identify that there is a challenge. You know, identifying there is a challenge. And if you see movements to actually work with a community that's looking to actually help bring about change. And the change can't be defined by you. You know, I can't tell you, when I was in U of T, I remember I was in one class and someone got up with a sociology class, there's 700 people in the lecture hall, and they said, you know what, the States is really bad, man. And you know what, wow. But thank God we don't have racism in Canada. But in the States, they're really bad. And they said, you know, there's no racism up here. And I stood up and I said, what? And I said, yeah, you know, it's true. And I said, I thank God that you said that, because I was thinking to myself, I was thinking of things that are perpetual. It's not true. And, you know, menopause and, you know, period pains, that's all those fallacies. I don't know why they keep talking about that. And, you know, and there was outrage. And I said, listen, the point being is, if you don't understand the pain, if you don't see the pain, you can't come and develop a solution to the pain. So to my melanated community, we love you, man. But listen, we've got to work together to work through it. You can't say we must pick up the bootstraps, because oftentimes we don't have access to those bootstraps. You don't even have access to the boots. And oftentimes you have access to the power sources and the power structures that are often systematically holding us back. So let's explore that, because the reality is, it's not just to your moral benefit, but it's really to your financial benefit. Again, there is great opportunity here financially. Again, everything has to go to power, privilege, and profit for you as well to integrate within the Black community. Let's sit down there and don't pick and choose, but let's sit down there and get a true understanding of what the challenges are, what the real challenges are, not the surface challenges. You know, let's not look at the colds anymore, the colds and sniff. Let's get to the actual cold, not the cough, to the cold. So that's what I say to the community, to the non-melanated community. We do love you, but let's work together.
And
to the Black
community, yes.
Oh, for sure. We've got to come together. Stop it. Stop. Put the division aside. Put all whatever the divisions are. I don't care. Everyone has the right to be what they want to be, where they want to be, where they're from, how they believe. All that's irrelevant, because as a people now, we are all grouped and we are treated and qualified the same, whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter. We need to sit down and coalesce together. And then once we do, stick together so we can build economic strategy, political strategies, social, judicial strategies as a whole, not just when someone's killed. There's more problems in our community when someone's killed. You know, when someone's killed, you hear this big outrage. But where's the outrage when you hear, you know, the disenfranchisement and undereducated of kids? Where's the disenfranchised when there's no economic community? We've got to come together. We have to now work together. Stop being enamored by the trinkets, the shining trinkets. You can get a pretty car and you can get this and that. Who cares? Those things aren't going to mean difference to your life. This has got our time, not only for us, but for our children. How are your children's lives? You need to challenge yourself. How are you leaving something better for your children? How are you going to make things better for your children? If you recognize that the system that you've been taught is getting education, coming out and living a great life, that is not working for us. It works to a certain extent, but is it as effective as you want it to be? No. How? Because you're the first hired, first fired. How can we build community? Let's sit down there and say, how can we work together? We've got to get to a place we've got the intelligence, we've got the ability, we've got the drive, we have so much. We have to be willing to learn, willing to work, and willing to move together as one. Together as one, we can do many. You can't win a fight with a finger. You can win something with a fist. Let's come together.
I love that. Win with the fist, not with the finger. Anton, thank you so much for sharing with us today. If people want to get in contact with you, is the best way your email address?
Yeah, sure. My email address is antonjames@rogers.com, or you can call me direct at 416-846-4392 is the best way to get a hold of me. For whatever it necessary be. If, for example, if you're part of the community or not part of the community, you want to talk about strategies, how we can work together, man, by all means. Whatever the case may be, man. If you want to check out one of my shows, that's cool too. I love that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't know you host show. What are the shows that you host? Give it some pub here.
Yeah, I host 2 shows. Well, I host the 2 most prominent shows I host right now. One is called Level Up Program for the BBPA, the Black Business Professional Association. It's a financial and funding masterclass teaching Black-led businesses how to go through the whole gamut from startup to infrastructure. So the first 2 weeks, week 1, I interviewed the head economist for the HSBC. The week 2, I did the deputy governor for the Bank of Canada. Week 3, I had the head of we brought in a bunch of lawyers. How do you structure companies? And then we brought in tax accountants another week, and we talked about how do you get access to government funding. And we brought in ministers, different ministers of small business and economic affairs, and different one of how can we get access to government procurement, and what about insurance? What about strategies? What about how there's a new bank that's been coming through, FACE program, which is going to be giving grants to Black businesses. How do you do that? How do you understand? How do you grow? That's what we're teaching them. That's what we teach them. The other one is called Ask Professional. Again, it's by the BBPA, the Black Business Professional Association, and they teach issues that matter to the Black community. Whether we talk about how to improve yourself personally, and your family, educationally, we talk to celebrate people within the community. We talk about challenges, everything from shadism to mental health to financial literacy to investments. We talk about how to really make meaningful change. I do a host of other ones as well, but those are my 2 most noted ones. If you want to find out about that, but definitely reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to share. And if you want to do hosting, yeah, I do almost hosting.
Well, see, this is the man who's taken over for me. No one knows me anymore. Anton's just
ruling
things. Anton's just ruling things.
No, not at all. Listen, man, I'm just a scroll trying to get in that. Like I'm telling you, for all jokes aside, man, like you've done such phenomenal things within our community, and that's the thing we need more. We need more where we have something to actually coalesce and bring us together. You have been the steady rock for years, bringing the community together and talking about what's going on, talking about real issues, and that's exactly it. So I am not, and I'll be wanting to say, I am not here. You know why I say that though? For real?
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening right now. You're having a lot of, everyone's trying to, well, me too. No, listen, man, I'm a humble fish. I recognize you have paid your dues. You've been there when others were not. And so I'm not here to try to take away from anybody. That's not it.
I want to showcase you and just show there's others, because there was times where I was the only fish in the sea.
That's absolutely correct.
Just to see other fishes out there, I'm here to help. I want all of you to do better than me. I want you past me. I'm here to serve, because I believe in the true definition of success for me is service, sacrifice, and selflessness. So that's why. So I was just joking with you. I am so happy for you, what you're doing. I'm always here to serve you and your family. I want to say a big thanks. Look forward to having you back when you have time, because there's more things. Looking forward to it.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2-time Canadian Ethnic Media Association Award winner, 2020 winner of the Best Podcast News, 2018 winner of the Innovation Award. Also, I host the only program in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And I am the board chair of the Global Food and Drink Initiative, which is a multimedia not-for-profit that showcases Blacks in the diaspora that are doing their thing in food, wine, and travel. As always, I'd like to just thank you for watching live on the replay or listening to the replay. As always, I close out with these things. One thing, yes, BIA Media, thank you for the production. And then live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourself grace, and we will certainly have Anton back. God bless, peace well, keep the faith, and walk good.